I don't know what happened to the countdown. But hey, welcome to another episode of PWT Talks NXT. I'm your host for the evening, Nate Lindberg. Merry Christmas Eve. This is December 24th, 2024. We're talking the Christmas NXT episode filmed in Lowell, Massachusetts, where I was in attendance, which is, I guess, a good thing considering I am by myself here tonight. So I've got a little bit to talk about. I'll try to provide a little bit of an in-person perspective on the show. And if you want to be a part of this show, feel free in the comments, in the chat rather. Ask any questions and as normal, and we'll do a show. Kelly might have abandoned me for his family, but the show must go on, right? That's what they say. Let's actually start with our main event segment here tonight. We saw Trick Williams, Oba Femi, and Eddie Thorpe in a talking segment in the middle of the ring. First, Trick Williams comes out to address the controversy over last week after he and Eddie Thorpe were the match came to a conclusion without Trick. Both Eddie and Trick's shoulders were on the mat during the pin, so it was a little unclear of who actually won. Obviously, after the match, and I believe I don't think this aired. Obviously, I was in the building last week, so I'm not sure how the show actually went off the air. I haven't watched the actual episode, but I believe it went off the air with everybody kind of like wondering what was happening with the NXT title. And I think it was on social media where they saw you'd see Ava come out alongside Shawn Michaels, kind of trying to figure out what what the finish was. They announced that Trick Williams retains the title without really explaining why to the crowd. Eddie Thorpe ended up pushing Shawn Michaels once again, which I thought they might address here tonight, but they didn't. Maybe that was just a for the crowd thing. I'm not sure, but that definitely happened. I was standing about 5 feet away from that. So Trick Williams comes out tonight to address that controversy, but he didn't get the chance to do so. Oba Femi wound up coming out. No sooner did Trick Williams basically bring the mic to his face. Oba Femi, essentially says that he is the future of NXT, and he's going to, win and beat Trick Williams at New Year's Evil coming up in a couple of weeks. Eddie Thorpe comes out. I believe it might have even actually been before Oba Femi started talking, but Eddie Thorpe comes out. Obviously, has a claim to the title. He didn't necessarily lose his title match in a I guess fair way. I get to agree with them there. I still don't know why they gave the win to Trick Williams. They didn't really explain why outside of just championship advantage or champions advantage type of a deal. Long story short, this winds up turning the match at New Year's Evil for the NXT championship into a triple threat. We're going to see Trick Williams, Oba Femi, and Eddie Thorpe in that triple threat for the title. In this segment, Oba Femi kind of said what I think a lot of us might have been thinking, and that is that Trick Williams may have tried to insert Eddie into this match as a last-minute way to kind of say, hey, I don't need to pin Oba Femi. I just need to make sure I pin Eddie Thorpe to keep my title. And Oba, essentially was like, that ain't going to happen. You both got to go through me. And he basically said, you've got a 0% chance of that happening when Ava makes her way out to make the match official. So again, that is an official match we'll be seeing at New Year's Evil. The segment in person, I mean, it basically came off exactly as it did on the show. What I thought was interesting, though, was when they were actually taping this, they filmed this in the middle of the matches, like right in the middle of the night. I thought this was going to wind up being the mid-show main event type of segment here. If I'm on the East Coast, so 9 o'clock Eastern, show starts at 8, so I figured this would probably start about 9 o'clock here tonight. But I was kind of surprised that this wound up being our ending. Reason I was a little surprised, but I guess it also makes sense, was that Santa Claus it's crazy saying Santa Claus, but it's Christmas, whatever. Santa Claus in the our main event match, the Christmas Fatal 4-Way Chaos, or Chaos Fatal 4-Way as they were calling it. The Santa Claus was Ridge Holland, and they didn't show this on TV, but Ridge got laid out by just about everybody in the match. And for us leaving the building, the show ended with Ridge Holland as Santa Claus lying on the mat, and all of the heels kind of ended up getting tossed out of the ring by Hank and Tank. But we'll talk about that when we get there. So back to this segment here. Like I said, Ava came out, made the match official. A couple notes here. Eddie Thorpe had intense heat in that building, especially for this segment. I started to say this last week, and I had to catch myself because I was starting to mix up the two different tapings in my brain, because obviously they recorded, they taped both last week's and this week's episode in Lowell, Massachusetts last week. Eddie had insane heat in that building, especially after everything that kind of happened on last week's episode, which for us was like an hour ago. So a lot of heat for this segment. He had heat before that, earlier in the night, but much more so here. I equate it honestly to Dirty Dom heat. Like I was in the building. It didn't come across quite like that on TV. They were certainly loud boos, but at least for me in the building, I couldn't understand almost the rest of the promo after Eddie Thorpe grabbed the mic. Or his part of the promo, I should say, while he was speaking, because the boos were just so loud in that building, and it's not like the speakers were quiet or anything. The boos were just that loud. My Apple Watch actually gave me a 91, I think 90 or 91 decibel warning during that thing. So there you go. But so yeah, Obafemi came off as an absolute star. After everything he said, everybody's I hope that came through. My microphone might have cut out my grunts because of noise canceling, but whatever. So Obafemi looks like a star. When he makes it up to the main roster, I think he's going to be absolutely fine. He's going to flourish, as we all have said he's going to for quite some time. And obviously Trick was incredibly over with the crowd as well. Everybody's chanting "Whoop that Trick" right along with him and everything. But like he and Oba were like right there. It's hard to tell who actually was more over with the crowd. Potentially Oba. I might, if I had to like do a 51%, 49% split type of deal, I might lean it in Oba's favor. I think people are really ready to see him with the title run and kind of have the brand on his back. He's been off TV for a little bit. Obviously he's back on TV, but he was off TV for a little bit after losing his title, the North American title. And they're obviously bringing him back and starting to include him more, but I think people are really ready to see him on TV much more and in that championship role. I know I am. I think Kelly is. Kevin. I think we're all kind of at that point where we're ready to see that. So yeah, this was an awesome segment. I think a great way to end the show. Obviously, the segment, I don't think I mentioned it, the segment ended up with all three of them brawling. Obafemi winds up taking out Trick Williams, goes to take out Eddie Thorpe, and Eddie manages to kind of squirrel away, as a good heel should, to kind of get a little bit more heat, kind of get us ready to watch him get his butt whooped at come New Year's Evil. And the closing shot of the show is Obafemi holding the title high up overhead, which I think is a great visual. I'm so ready to see him actually in that position. So there we go, main event segment for tonight. Let me hit the mailbag before we do anything else. If you want to be part of this show, you can certainly do that. PWTorchNXT@gmail.com. You can ask me and Kelly a question. Kelly will normally be here with me, But again, he left me for his family. I don't believe it. We've got two emails actually from Azan. One he sent in last week that we didn't get to. There's a lot of chaos going on last week. Me trying to make it to the show from the building to actually get on air, and then Kelly started having issues with his voice, so he jumped off. So I had to finish up the host. There's a lot of chaos going on. So Azan, sorry we missed your email from last week, but I'll hit the one from last week as well as your email from for this week. And as I am speaking, we get an email from the good Dr. Kevin P. Catani, so we'll hit that in a minute as well. Azan's email. Good evening. This is the one from last week. Good evening, NXT gang. What are your thoughts on Wes Lee taking on a managerial role for Tyson and Tyreek? How do you think this position aligns with his skills and his strengths? Personally, I am completely 100% for something like that for Wes Lee. I think it would be good, not just for him. I mean, obviously he had a really bad injury, and he may not be able to wrestle again, type of a thing. Obviously, he came back from that, and he's back and wrestling, and everything seems to be great. But I think taking on a role like that, it allows him to limit his bumps in the ring, still be able to be a presence on TV. And he is a veteran in the business. I mean, he might be in developmental here in NXT, but he's a veteran in on the indies. He's been doing this for a really long time. Could not remember the exact date off the top of my head, but he's doing this for a really long time. So he has a lot of knowledge to offer some younger talent. So I think bringing the three of them together and having I don't want to say them be his lackeys or his muscle or something like that, but in a way, kind of. But Wes Lee kind of at the helm, and then as long as they don't promote them and kind of book them as just his muscle, and they kind of give them a story that we can latch onto and kind of sink our teeth into, I think that would be a great way to kind of get Tyson some more eyeballs and more TV time on Tyson and Tyreek, as well as a great use of Wes Lee potentially before getting called up to the main roster. I mean, at this point, I don't know how much long Wes Lee's going to be on NXT. I mean, he's pretty much ready to go up. The only thing he hasn't done yet is the NXT title. He's not in that picture yet. Maybe stand and deliver time frame in the next 4 months or so, or about 3 months, 3.5 months or so, till we hit the stand and deliver. But I don't know. So obviously we'll see. We'll see with Wes Lee. We'll get, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Then with, let's see, his other question, or another one of his questions, what talent do you believe NXT should consider bringing in during the transfer window? Names like Santos and Pretty Deadly come to mind, as it seems many on the main roster aren't doing much at the moment. I think those names certainly work. Santos Escobar, Pretty Deadly, even, the old Legado, Cruz del Toro, and I can't think of Cruz del Toro's partner right now off the top of my head. But the two of them, maybe, with maybe not necessarily with Santos, but something like that. Obviously they're the LWO now, but you know what I'm saying. A couple other names that I wrote down because I tried to be prepared where I knew I was going to be by myself tonight. The Motor City Machine Guns. Obviously, it's not that they're not doing much on the main roster. I guess maybe a little bit less. Not that they don't have the NXT titles, the tag team titles. But Motor City Machine Guns, they never made it to NXT. They went straight to the main roster. I think a quick stint in NXT. I'm not saying move them to NXT, but something like month long, maybe month and a half, 2 month long stint in NXT would just be fun. I think it'd be really cool just to see the two of them in NXT, iconic tag team that we potentially may have never even saw in WWE. So I think that'd be pretty cool. Joaquin Wilde, thank you, Azan. You mentioned that in the chat there. That was the name I was trying to think of a little bit ago. Third question: what team do I think performed better than Fraxium? I don't think there was any, is what Azan says. Honestly, I gotta kind of agree. I was not a big, wasn't huge on the Fraxium train way back in the day, but they've grown on me, and I think their story arc is great. They're like I said a few weeks ago, when I thought they may lose the titles, I'm like, I'm not ready for this to be over yet. They were just named Tag Team of the Year by I think it was Sports Illustrated. I remember seeing the headline. Don't have it up on a tab in my browser, so don't take my word at that. But I think it was Sports Illustrated Tag Team of the Year. Yeah, Fraxium. I think they're ready for the main roster. Whenever the main roster is ready for them. Let's see. In Azan's second email, his first question was one of the same about the transfer window. So his second question has to do with the Heritage Cup match. So let's actually get into the Heritage Cup match real quick here. This match, we haven't actually talked about our main event segment, but whatever, we'll get there. Our main event match. Lexis King versus Charlie Dempsey for the Heritage Cup. We saw Lexis King actually win the Heritage Cup here in a bit of a unique way. We were 0-0 going into round 3. Actually, let me back up before we even get into the match. Before the match started, and this is something that they did not play in the building. So I was very confused when William Regal came out with Lexis King for this match. But William Regal walks up to Lexis King backstage and essentially said, "Hey, I'm impressed with you. I'd like to be in your corner again for your Heritage Cup match." And Regal after Lexis King says, "Sure, like I'd love to have you," essentially, William Regal shows brass knuckles. So you knew he was going to bring the brass knuckles with him to the ring. So again, Lexis King versus Charlie Dempsey for the Heritage Cup. We were 0-0 going into round 3, and then in the final round, this essentially actually 0-0 going into the final round. Take that back. When I wrote my note here, I wrote down round 3. I think I was at round 3, but coming into the final round, there was a spot where they basically both bonked their heads, fell to the ground. Ren Sinclair at Charlie Dempsey's corner kind of like jumps in the ring and tries to oh my God, Charles. She was screaming Charles, which I thought was hilarious. Charles. And she's like fanning him off with a towel and stuff. And the ref runs over there. William Regal kind of like leans in a little bit under the he's standing on the ground, kind of leans in a little bit under the bottom rope and hands Lexis King, who's lying on the mat kind of close to him, puts the brass knuckles in his hand. Lexis King looks at them and stands up and is like, "No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to win this way. I want to win the titles. I want to win the Heritage Cup with integrity." I know he said the word integrity in his backstage segment later on in the night, but I think he said it during this segment. Essentially, that's what he told William Regal, though, is I want to win this with integrity. He tries to hand the knuckles back to William Regal. Regal doesn't take them and gives him a big left hook, sending Lexis King flying into the ring, which he still had the brass knucks in his hand. When he hit the mat, the brass knucks fly across the ring over by Charlie Dempsey. Dempsey picks them up, and he's looking at them like, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll use them. Maybe I won't. How did they get here? I don't know." And the referee essentially sees the brass knuckles, sees Lexis King lying on the ground, and disqualification for Charlie Dempsey. And the bell rings, and the next thing that you hear coming out of the speakers inside the Lowell Memorial Auditorium was that Lexis King, as a result of a disqualification, is the new Heritage Cup champion. And the first thing that went through my mind, the first thing that went through my mind was, wait, why did it change on a DQ? That it doesn't change. Championships don't change hands on a DQ. My second thought was Kelly's going to hate this, and Kelly is with his family tonight, so I don't know when he's going to see this match or not, but I'm sure he's going to hate it when he does. So Azan's question, coming back to Azan's email, he says that he likes the idea of a championship changing hands due to disqualification. He's never understood why the challenger should be punished for champion getting disqualified, whether it was intentional or accidental. And quite frankly, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that statement whatsoever. Like, why punish the person, that essentially got hit or whatever, and if they get disqualified, in that sense. But I just want some consistency with rules in WWE. I mean, it's like cage matches. Do rope breaks count or don't they? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they never tell you until you're actually in the match. I want some consistency with rules in my wrestling. There's rules for a reason. It's to help with storytelling. Obviously, yeah, sure, you can bend the rules with wrestling. There's no problem with that. But I, there are it's happened before where championships have changed on a disqualification. It's not something that's never happened. Couldn't tell you what those times are off the top of my head, but I was watching a top 10, one of those top 10 YouTube things that pop up and you get sucked into a rabbit hole. I was watching one of those and I know it's happened a few times. But that being said, I just want consistency. So when that happened, it's like, okay, we've already in the building anyway, we've already seen the screwy finish for the NXT title that technically aired last week. Um, Now we're seeing this, which is a screwy finish for the Heritage Cup. It just, I don't know, that it was very deflating in the building. A lot of people cheered, myself included, for Lexus King, but there was just, I don't know, the cheer didn't last very long. It was kind of a little bit of a deflated thing, a deflated feeling, at least in my section. There was a I don't know if it was a family or just a group of friends. I probably just a group of friends behind me. They were very loud and boisterous throughout the course of the night. Normally, I don't like that, but they were hilarious. So I was actually all about it. I could hear them chant, like hear them screaming in my head throughout the show. That being said, I could hear them talking and like, why is this changing hands? Everybody was very confused. So I'm sure they're going to address this. A little bit later on in the night, we saw that we saw Lexus King being congratulated by Sarah Schreiber, and he was saying that he's saying he's so happy he won this with integrity, and she keeps taking the mic away trying to ask him a question, and he would just cut her off and keep talking and talking. So there's a story there that they're going to wind up telling. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I hope it has something to do with the way that he won the match. It again was a bit of a satisfying or unsatisfying conclusion to what was otherwise a fantastic Heritage Cup match. I haven't even talked about the match. A great wrestling match. So there we go. So anyway, I've been ignoring the chat here because I can only do so many things at once. Azan says that Alex Shelley did work NXT once, which actually, yeah, you're right. Now that you say that, I do remember that. When I was talking about the Motor City Machine Guns a little while ago. Standard Deviation. Hi, Nate. I enjoy your work, mate. Hey, appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you enjoy the things that I'm doing because I'm having fun doing them. Frederick Cody comes in. Does NXT do better rating on the new channel than USA Network? To be honest with you, I don't know. I'm not much of a ratings guy. I haven't followed the ratings, so I don't want to say yes or no because I don't know. If I can, while I'm doing the show, I'll try to Google some ratings, but I'll be Googling while I'm talking, so it might be a little bit difficult. Like the dead air while I take a sip of my drink. Anyway, NXT, sorry, Azan chimes in saying NXT does a little bit lower on the CW. Appreciate it, Azan. Thank you very much for that in terms of the ratings. Let's go to the Christmas Chaos Fatal 4-Way match, which saw Luca Crisafino and Channing Stacks Lorenzo, the family, versus OTM, Lucian Price and Bronco Nima, versus Hank and Tank, versus the No Quarter Catch crew, Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne. This was a fun match. Like I said a little bit earlier, this was our in the building. This is what actually ended the night for us. It's exactly what you thought it was going to be. It's a tornado tag with 4 different teams. You get 8 men just with a whole bunch of different Christmas themed weapons, having fun. That's what this match was. This is not a match that's going to go down in history as any sort of a classic or anything like that. This was just something fun to watch on TV and to send the crowd home, kind of send the crowd home happy. I was going to just say something and it completely just escaped my brain. That said, there was a lot that was going on with this match. Really hard for me to watch it ringside. I know I said this last week, but one of the cameramen was standing literally right in front of me. I had front row seats, standing right in front of me. So like, there was a lot that I missed. So I'm glad I rewatched this here tonight. Obviously, the table with milk and cookies ringside, somebody's going to go through it. We wound up seeing Stacks get put through that. Before the match even started, this was off camera, hilarious moment, and I thought this was a great little character moment for Luca Cristofino. The lights were dim, dark in the building, and they were showing some video on the screen. It was either a commercial, NXT or WWE on Netflix or whatever it was they were playing in the building. And one of the guys that I had mentioned was sitting behind me yells out, "Luca, you need a paralegal." And Luca, just without missing a beat, goes, "Yeah, man, I do. That would be super helpful," or something like that. It was great, and it got a pretty good chuckle out of the crowd. We also saw that bowling ball spot on Tank here. There was a snowball fight. We had kendo sticks coming out of presents. Just a lot of craziness. I thought this was a lot of fun being there in person. Watching it on TV, it, probably, at least even for me, it didn't come across fun as was in the building. As I said, and I don't think they showed this on TV. They showed Ridge Holland or Santa Claus attacking the Don standing ringside, who had just handed out crowbar candy canes to his family members in the match, and that they kind of used them or tried to use them to win, but OTM was like, nope, don't think so. And OTM wound up getting the win and will become the number one contender, or became the number one contenders for the tag team titles, which should be a good thing for both Kelly and Kevin. Last week they were like, why aren't they pushing OTM? And I was just thinking to myself, I'd love to tell them, but I told them I wouldn't give them spoilers. So we're finally getting a push for OTM after quite some time here. There was something I was going to talk about, and I was going to circle back to with the match. Ridge Holland. I don't know if they showed it was Ridge Holland on the show. That was Santa Claus. Now that I think about it, like when the show actually aired tonight, Santa Claus attacks the Don, and that kind of led into the finish of the match. But yeah, like I said a little while ago, the Santa Claus is Ridge Holland, and that Santa Claus was scattered through all over the show. Okay, Azan says that they did show that. So cool. Anyway, I thought this, like I said, a lot of fun. Another thing after the match, like I said, there was a big blowout where everybody kind of ganged up on Ridgy Claus, or whatever you want to call him. Miles Bourne ends up getting sent out of the ring right in front of me, and he's on the ground selling. And as you know, Miles Bourne is deaf. They haven't really said that on TV, but even in the No Quarter Catch crew backstage segment tonight, they make fun of it, and they at least acknowledge it. How was your Christmas, Miles? Oh, pretty quiet. Or how was your Christmas growing up? Pretty quiet. And so again, the show's over. Vic Joseph and Booker T are walking past me to go, up the ramp and in the backstage area. Miles Bourne's on the ground, and Vic just stops in front of Miles Bourne. He's like, "Hey, are you okay? You all right? Hey, do you hear me? Hey!" And it was absolutely hilarious. Again, don't know how many people actually would have picked that up if one of those if you know moments, but it was one of those moments that Vic Joseph's stock went up a little bit for me, because he can be so formulaic and maybe a little vanilla sometimes on commentary, but I think that's how he's being produced. So just to kind of see that little moment out of him was absolutely hilarious for me. All right, let's keep going here. We had one more question from Azan's email. Does it seem like Shawn Michaels is spinning his wheels with Tony D'Angelo and his family? It appears like the class of NXT talents from 2021 that included Tony has mostly been called up to the main roster, except for Tony. I don't know if he's necessarily spinning his wheels. I think Tony D'Angelo just needed a little bit more time down at NXT, a little bit more time to be maybe not necessarily polish up his wrestlings. I think his wrestling's been good, maybe the character and all of that. I think now he's in a great position. He's got the family behind him. He's got the NXT North American title over his shoulder. He defeated Obafemi, but it like. I don't know. I think he's at a spot. He's in a really good spot right now, and I think whenever they're ready to call him up, he's going to flourish as best as he can. Is an Italian mafia gimmick going to work on the main roster? I don't know. You look back on some of the. Oh my God! Why can't I think of the Italian stable from ECW? I know you guys will tell me in the chat, and I'll see it in about 10 seconds. Little Nunzio, Little Guido, you guys know who I'm talking about. And obviously that got over to some degree, but it was never like main event level or anything like that, especially I'm talking WWE. So we'll see what happens with them when they get there. There are only so many spots on the main roster. So if there is not a meaningful spot for Tony D'Angelo and the family, then I don't know. I don't think they should be sent up just to be sent up. I would rather see them, and again, maybe monetarily, like and for their finances, how much they get paid, sure, you'd want to see them get called up. But in terms of like their character, TV presence, and everything else, I'd rather personally see them stay down in NXT and have a storyline and still develop their character in a developmental setting than get called up to the main roster and just kind of blend into the background and things like that. Then let's see here. We've got another email from Kevin Catani. Salutations, gents, but there's only one. So I'm gonna adjust his intro. Salutations, Nate. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you both and to our fabulous community of listeners. I thought tonight was a solid part 2 to last week's part 1. Great job, Nate, for staying tight-lipped on potential spoilers. Thank you. It was tough. I'm loving Stephanie Vicker and I'm happy for OTM. Hopefully this leads to some meaningful programming for them. My 2 questions this week are, what are your favorite holiday tradition and associated memory? And 2, what are you hoping to see in NXT in the new year? Thanks as always. Go VIP and listen to NXT 8 years back. Office hours now over. Professor Kevin Catani, PhD. I wish I had a chance to read this before we went live. I didn't, because I would have put a little bit more thought into the question. My favorite holiday tradition. This is, it doesn't say wrestling tradition. I'm assuming this is like family tradition type of a thing. There's a couple of them. One of them is, and this, it extends a little bit more than Christmas, but it's going to apply to Christmas this year. So and it has for a few years now. But whenever there's like a big Lindberg get together, my mom makes enchiladas. So gotta love that. She makes damn good enchiladas, and we'll eat them all the time. So anytime we really get together, there's enchiladas. So there we go. Enchiladas, that's one. My second is, when I was a kid, there was this calendar that we hung up on the wall, and it had the numbers 1 through 25 on it. Had this and it's made of cloth, this like cottage scene on it, and every one of the numbers had a pouch, and there was just this little tiny mouse, and not like a computer mouse. I mean, I'm a nerd, but not a computer mouse, an actual little like stuffed tiny little mouse, and you'd move it from day to day until you get to 25. And I just always loved moving the mouse as a kid. My sister wound up with it, and she has it hanging up at her house. I wanted it. I'm older. I should have got it, but whatever. But she still sends me pictures and stuff of like her moving the mouse. So that's also one of my favorite family traditions. And what am I hoping to see in NXT in the new year? I want to see more. Okay, this is going to sound weird. More of the same. and I don't mean like in terms of storylines and things like that, but I think NXT has been on a great trajectory and path over the last year, especially since rebranding back, to, well, I want to say black and gold, but it's like black and silver. They've done a great job kind of progressing the show. And I wanted to see it stay on that kind of that trajectory. Um, there's going to be more involvement from the main roster with NXT being included in the transfer window. So it's going to be a little bit different, but we've also seen a lot of main roster involvement over the last year. So we see what that could look like. Um, I'm I'm just hoping for again more of the same, but also more improvement. In things that are going to keep us entertained and wanting to come back week after week. There was a point during the NXT 2.0 era where I almost gave this up because I'm like, I don't think I can keep watching the show. It was that bad. And I'm glad I did because obviously it got better. I know wrestling's cyclical. I knew it couldn't stay bad forever. They were either going to cancel the show or it was going to get better eventually. So I stuck with it. Here I am, many years later. But but yeah, there we go. So Kevin, thank you very much for the email. Merry Christmas to you and Dazan, and to everybody, but to the two of you especially for sending in emails. All right, let's keep on moving here. Let's go to Dion Lennox versus Ashanti the Adonis. And I said this last week, when Dion Lennox came out for this match, this is something that I mentioned, again, like I said last week, wasn't trying to give spoilers or anything, but I didn't think it was going to be a huge spoiler, so whatever. Dion Lennox music hit. And I heard music, but like I was kind of doing a couple things on my phone or whatever. The crowd didn't pop when he came out. Like the crowd went mild when Dion Lennox came out, which I mentioned just because it was so quiet, it was loud. Once I realized, because he ended up walking right past me during his entrance. That's the only reason I knew he was walking out. I didn't, and I'm sitting right next to the entrance ramp. I didn't even see him walk past me until he went straight in front of me. But once he gets in the ring, man, oh man, he's really good. We'll talk about that in a second. But Dion Lennox versus Ashanti the Adonis. Obviously, we've seen a lot of turmoil between these two over the last couple of weeks, all over some girls. Nikita Lyons and Carmen Petrovic. So there's a lot of heat going back and forth there. I thought this was for as little of a pop that Dion Lennox got when he came out, he won the crowd over by the end. He obviously didn't win. Ashanti the Adonis wound up taking the win here when Nikita after Nikita helped him, him being Ashanti the Adonis, helped him by putting his foot on the rope during a pin attempt from Dion Lennox. There's a lot of things going on right now in my brain. So yeah, so like I said, we got a visual win for Dion Lennox, right there in that moment when Nikita put the foot on the rope. So because obviously he would have, Dion Lennox would have won otherwise, but Ashanti the Adonis, wound up taking the win shortly thereafter. The crowd, like I said, we were pretty much there for the match. I wouldn't say the entire time. It took us a little bit to get into it. And I think that comes across on TV or came across on TV. The crowd was kind of solid, was kind of quiet for this until Dion Lennox like chucked Ashanti the Adonis up into the air and he flapjacked to the ground or to the mat. That got a major pop out of the crowd, and I think it kind of woke everybody up. Like, okay, let's actually pay attention to this. One of the things that I wrote down in my notes for tonight is that Dion Lennox has all of the makings of a star, just needs to figure out how to connect to the crowd. He's got the look. The gimmick isn't there either, so I guess he's got to figure out the gimmick. But I think that'll come with time. He's just making his debut. He's been on TV a few times, so he's really starting to get a push a little bit here. But I think once he settles into a gimmick that's going to connect with the crowd, he's got potential. He's great in the ring. He's got a great look. And I think even with some of the promo segments he's been in, he's got a little bit of charisma. I think he's got to loosen up a little bit, like when he's, acting and stuff. But again, wrestlers are wrestlers. They're not actors. They're trying their best. So There we go. Let's keep moving on to Alba Fire and Isla Dawn versus JC Jane and Jasmine Nix. There was a lot that was going on during this match. So before the match started, you see up in the balcony, you get a shot of Ridgie Claus before we knew it was Ridge Holland, but Santa up in the balcony, and it wasn't immediately noticeable until they zoomed in. But there is Katana Chance and Caden Carter. Hold on, Katana Chance and Caden Carter. Casey Catanzaro is the name that's gone, not Caden Carter. Caden Carter, Katana Chance sitting there, are standing next to Santa watching the match. We also wound up seeing Shotzi, Tatum Paxley, and Gigi Dolan come out here, and they end up coming out ringside and watch this match pretty closely. The finish came leading to an unholy union win. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn picked up the win after JC Jane went up the top rope. She gets pushed off by Gigi Dolan, and led to the unholy union using their double team finisher, which can't remember the name of, and they also didn't say it on TV tonight for me to write down, using their double team finish to pick up the win. This was a lot of fun in person because of how many things were going on in the match. The match itself was good. It was a good tag team match. But all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, you see JC, Tatum, and Gigi, or not J. So sorry, let me say that again. Gigi, Tatum, and Shotzi, walk past and kind of walk over to the ring. And so you kind of watch it. It was watching them the whole time, kind of trying to see when they were going to, wind up interfering. And it was mostly just playing with the crowd until they interfered in the match, or Gigi interfered in the match, during the finish here. I think this was interesting for a few different reasons. I mean, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, it's always great to see them back in NXT. The women's tag division on the main roster, start and stop. A lot of times they get a push, then they're not on TV for a while and things like that. So, good to see them come down. Actually, that going back to Azan's email, that might even be another name or a couple names for the transfer window, even though we're seeing them here, maybe to officially move them back down to NXT for a little while. It could be cool. We did see a segment a little later on in the night with Lash legend Jakara Jackson. I wrote this down. I'm looking for it in my notes. Okay, yeah, the Meta Girls, Gigi, Shotzi, Tatum, Casey, Katana Chance, and Caden Carter. I always want to say Casey Catanzaro first, and it screws me up. But we saw all of them backstage talking and kind of talking about the women's tag division within NXT. So there could be a little bit more focus being put on the NXT women's tag team division coming up pretty soon. So it'd be cool to maybe see them as part of that transfer window. Them being Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, I went on a bit of a tangent and lost my original point. So there we go. I ended up coming back to it, but in case you lost me in there, I was talking about Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. If you're still with me here tonight, folks, let's keep moving on. Our opener, we already talked about the Heritage Cup. So the opening match was Stephanie Vaquer and Cora Jade. Stephanie Vaquer versus Cora Jade. We ended up seeing Stephanie Vaquer go over with the Archangel. Kalani Jordan winds up coming in, doing a run-in after the match with the kendo stick, and starts beating Cora Jade with that kendo stick, which is really cool to see this unhinged side of Kalani Jordan. And we'll talk about that in a second. But Stephanie Vaquer winds up coming back to the ring. She'd already kind of started to walk towards the back. She comes back to the ring and kind of backs Kalani off, and kind of protects her, as Kalani says a little bit later on, from Cora Jade. So that little bit later on was a segment between, again, let me find it in my notes here, because they didn't play this segment in the building. I didn't actually see this segment that I'm about to talk about in the building. So we saw Kalani Jordan yelling at Stephanie Vaquer backstage for protecting her and, saying she doesn't need her help. She's got it. And Lola Vice winds up coming over to her and is like, hey, she was just trying to help out. You need to calm down. Kalani still flips out at the both of them and kind of calls them out, calls them hypocrites for some of their actions compared to Kalani, who's trying to get retaliation on Jade. She's like, I just did the same thing that you guys just did with your particular situations, and now I'm a problem. Get out of my face. So this was a good character, some great character development for Kalani Jordan. She's been, since losing the North American title, she's been upset. She's mad, and she's mad at Cora Jade because she's one of the ones that cost her the title. So it's really cool to see this kind of anger come out of her. I don't think it's going to necessarily lead to a heel turn per se, but I'm hoping that it leads to something more for Kalani, because she's got all of her ring work is great, her charisma is good. It's the gimmick that was a little bit like, where can you go from here? You're somebody that, gymnastics, you're happy to be here, but give us some more. And I think this is that more that we've been asking for. So really happy with that there. Let me make a quick scroll through my notes here one more time. But I think that's about. Oh, we also had one of the things. The last thing that they didn't talk about was the Ethan Page video promo talking about breaking Javon Evans' jaw from last week, where we saw the blood get pouring out of Javon Evans' mouth. Very clearly a blood capsule. I talked about that last week on the show. On TV, it comes across very red. In the building, it was extremely red, very red, like not blood red, like fire engine red. So it's like very clearly a blood capsule. It was cool. It was a cool visual, but it's fake. I don't know. I don't know. I think the visual of him getting stomped with the chair was enough. I don't know if they necessarily needed to go that extra mile with the blood capsule, but whatever. It's more of a nitpick than anything. I don't really care one way or another. It's just, I don't know. It seemed like maybe a little bit excessive. But this video package with Ethan Page, or video promo rather, of him kind of talking about what he did and all of that, I thought was great. So this building in the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, this is, I've talked about it a few times on the show, very iconic building. This is the building where Shawn Michaels lost his smile. And I wasn't there for that. I wasn't a wrestling fan back then. I was really little back then. It was right before my wrestling fandom. But Ethan Page cut a promo last week where he mentions that he lost his smile. And some people in the building picked up on it. I don't know how many people at home would have picked up on it, even though they had shown the smile clip earlier in the night. But still, Ethan Page, he says that. And one of the things he says in this video promo tonight was that he took Javon Evans' smile away, and he found his smile again by taking yours. And I thought that was an absolutely brilliant heel line, a great through line through that whole smile thing. If you want to weave the whole smile thing in, Shawn Michaels is NXT now, or runs NXT now. So that being an iconic moment in his career in that building, now it's his baby in there. I thought it was kind of a cool moment and a good way to get to Javon Evans and Ethan Page. Blood capsule notwithstanding. With that said, guys, Merry Christmas Eve. Have a great holiday, Christmas, whatever it is that you celebrate. I'm not sure what's going on for next week's show with New Year's Eve. I will not be available. I don't know if Kelly is going to be available. We haven't talked about it yet. So we'll figure something out, but there's a chance we won't be live next week. So if we're not here, we'll try to record something for the Daily Cast podcast feed and go from there. But with that said, I'm Nate Lindberg. You can check the things I do out at natelindberg.com. And I usually will say we'll see you next week, but if not, we'll see you in 2. Take care.